Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be working on my next painting project and I'm going to be doing a sketch for the painting, and I plan to upload this after I actually do the painting if it all works out. So this is the reference image that I'll be using, and I'll link this into the painting demonstration so that after you watch the painting you can watch how I do the sketch beforehand, because I think it's more interesting to watch this afterwards rather than before, because you don't know how the painting will turn out, and if it doesn't turn out then I won't upload either. I particularly like this image. I took it when I was in this town called Besalú, a medieval town in northern Spain. There's a nice contrast of lights, strong shadows, diffused shadows, a foreground, the river. A lot to experiment with and a lot of variation with different techniques of watercolour. Dry brush here. So let's get on with it. Gonna start off as usual marking the biggest shapes, breaking down and simplifying the complex shapes into easier forms to draw. So that's the river, base goes there, and also this will be an opportunity to edit the reference photo to improve the composition of it. Remove elements that I don't want, maybe add elements like a figure, which I think I'll do. I put this grid onto my border, onto my composition, so that I can split up the sections, and it helps me draw accurately. And like in the last video I explained, it splits it into thirds, where thirds are attractive numbers in terms of painting composition. I'll keep this drawing a line drawing, and I won't add any tone into it, even though I'll be thinking of that whilst I'm drawing. I won't add any in this particular sketch. And I'll upload the full video of the drawing, even though it might be quite long and boring if I'm not talking all the time. You can always skip it. You can see which areas you want to see me draw. You can increase the speed. I'll try and include the reference image into the description below so you can follow along and possibly do the painting as well. Practice painting it. I've seen a lot of artists paint this town. I'm using a thick, blunt pencil at the moment for this early stage where I don't want to get into high details. Trying to think of my centre of interest, and I think it's going to be here where the harshest shadows are. Although I'll keep a rhythm throughout the whole of the drawing. I'll explain more at the end, but there's going to be a kind of rhythm, so wherever the eye lands on the painting or drawing, it'll have a direction. It won't just get lost and confused. And if you can draw a good composition with pencil, then it's 100 times easier to paint a good painting with a good composition. And if you can't do it with a pencil, then it's pretty much impossible to do it with paint. Because it's so much easier to do with pencil than it is with paint. I think I'm going to add a figure here, just off center. But just keeping it loose at this stage. He'll probably be fishing. Keeping the direction of the fishing line towards the center of interest there. Next, moving over to the finer lead mechanical pencil. Starting from left to right so I don't smudge, because I'm going to go into finer details now. I'm fairly happy with where everything is at the moment. Where some parts are quite ambiguous, I might imply different tones. Because some soft edges, some soft tones, it's not going to have a hard line. And I'm going to keep this sketch with me when I paint. For me to remember the design that I'm going for. Some antennas there. Just going to rotate it around so I get a better angle. I'm going to put thinner lines on the areas that need less attention. I'm going to do obscure architectural marks here because it will be fairly dark, this section in the painting. And whilst doing this sketch, you can really plan the painting in your mind. You can almost think about how you would react with the paint whilst you do this. So I'm doing some foliage now. And whilst I'm doing it, I'm aware that when I paint it, I'll have to paint these in negative space. So I'll have to do an underlay of a bright green colour and then use the pigment of these buildings to paint out these leaves rather than directly painting the leaves themselves. So this will be dark, this bit here. Light foliage here, dark foliage here. Bringing the water across the top of the river. So like I say, hopefully you've already seen the painting, the finished painting. As I'll be uploading this afterwards. Like I did with my last video, my last painting, even though I did the sketch beforehand, I uploaded it afterwards, just so you have context. And these marks, even though they're much bolder, and even though I haven't rubbed out these lines yet, they're almost invisible underneath these current lines that I'm doing, because they're more defined. It's almost not necessary to use a rubber. It's good practice to try and not use a rubber, for corrections at least, because it trains you to be a bit more accurate. It's less forgiving, it forces you to look more clearly in the first place. Even though it's a bit of an uncomfortable feeling to begin with. It's a good training exercise. There's quite a lot of brick details and window details that I'm not going to put in because I'm trying to simplify it. I'll keep the details where I want them to be to lead the eye, but the rest I'm going to ignore because I don't want to distract the eye. Don't want it to be overwhelming. I think that's why you could have the same reference image or the same subject and have hundreds of different artists do their interpretation, and they'll all look a bit different because their unique vision will select different things to show. Some different artists will choose different centres of interest. Now I did make a mistake there, so I'll have to rub it. So because I made a mistake, I need to think why that happened and plan a bit better next time. So I'm going to do a point where the line starts and a point where the line ends, and hopefully create a more confident, correct line. Pressing a bit too hard. A good exercise you could do is find one of your favourite paintings and basically do a sketch like this, simplifying the composition of that painting, that particular painting, and you can learn a lot about how that artist thought about his composition, and it'll come through in your own work. And the more variety you have of different artists, different kinds of paintings, the more unique your development will be as an artist. I'm going to extend that a bit higher. This is a good reason to do a sketch, because although I'm saying it's best not to use a rubber, it's a perfect opportunity to work out your composition before you actually paint. You can make mistakes here without it affecting the final piece. Useful to have these guidelines to make sure you have them parallel, and that means that they're going to be absolutely vertical, they're not going to be skew-if. Now I'm going to have 4 kind of, I don't even know what they're called, bricks, like at the top of the castle, coming through here. But it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to imply, you just have to imply what you're trying to put. And there's a shadow coming down here. Coming across like that. This would be 10 times harder without the guidelines, and I don't think it's cheating at all to use guidelines if it's going to improve the end result. There's going to be an archway there. Some fiddly architectural bits here. So I'm putting a line there, but the actual line in the drawing, the painting, I'll try and keep it very smooth. It'll be more like a soft shadow rather than a line. Antennas. Some windows that, again, simplifying those. It only needs to be a square or a rectangle. You don't need to put in loads of detail if you don't want to. Put in a little figure there. Applying some figures walking across the bridge there. come back down here. And draw this figure. Going to be fishing, so keep him holding a fishing rod. And that's okay just for the time being, for the sketch, for the purpose of this sketch. Some reeds. Obviously keeping these lines very organic rather than the rigid ones or the architecture, because it's contrasting man-made forms with nature forms. Then let's apply some ripples. So unlike the photo, I can look at this and know exactly what stage to paint next. It's as a reminder of the different elements I want. So I know which layers I'd have to do first in terms of the water and breaking the painting down. Whereas if I was just looking at the photo reference or as out in nature and didn't do a sketch beforehand, it would be quite, there's so much complexity, there's so many details, so endless amount of possibilities that it's pretty impossible, or was very difficult to have such a clear vision. So this archway, the bridge, will have to be done with quite a lot of precision, because if it looks funny, it will ruin the whole painting. So I can be pretty sure that bit's correct. So it's just looking at what you know is correct that's going to come down just next to that line there. And then connecting the dots, giving yourself as many guidelines that you know are true, and then connecting them in a nice confident way. So that goes straight up until it reaches that, about there. Then it starts to curve and reaches there, so and then similar thing, looking to where that curve ends, directly down from that window, so there. So I know that needs to go there, and I'm going to connect it there, so, and then it goes off there, so. I'm going to take a rubber to soften it a bit, because the line weight was much heavier than the rest of it, and I don't want it to take as much attention. Shadow coming down there. Some more brickwork. The shadow underneath this bridge will be very soft, so I'm only putting in light pencil marks here. That's coming up here. In reality, that would be a vertical line going up, but I'm kind of obscuring, bending it, tilting it to the left a bit to kind of draw the eye in a bit more. If I say anything that sounds confusing or I'm not being clear enough, let me know in the comments and I'll try and clear up what I'm trying to say, because I'm still getting used to talking whilst drawing. where that stone reached the river. Now I'm going to rub the rest of the lines away. I'm kind of doing these particular sketch videos as an experiment to see whether they're useful or not for people. If it turns out they're not that useful, I'll just stick to the painting videos. But I can't see any harm of uploading them, because if people aren't interested, they don't have to watch them. I wouldn't do this kind of sketch when, well, I wouldn't usually draw this specifically so tight. I wouldn't do such a tight drawing if I'm out and about. I'd keep it a bit looser, because when you're outside, seeing the scene in front of your eyes rather than a photograph is a different strategy. Being a bit looser helps define, makes it easier to select which parts you want to focus on. But when you're doing it from a photo, the photo has already helped doing a lot of that for you. So now I'm just going to go over some lines that I want to make a bit more obvious. So I'm going to darken the line weight. There's going to be quite a big contrast here with the leaves and the shadow under the bridge. So there should be a bit of a rhythm going on there. You've got the foliage coming down here, leading up to the archway, coming down here, back there again. Also there's a bit of a curve going the other way. Shadow line coming down the roof, going down there, going down the shadow. Let's do a few clouds. It might not be obvious as clouds using pencil. It's going to be a blue sky It's always worth doing a value tonal sketch as well, but I won't do that in this video just to save time. But basically, on this side it'll be a darker blue sky and light buildings, so dark on light, and on this side it'll be lighter sky with dark buildings, so light on dark. So this video is drawing towards an end now. I'm just putting in some birds to add some depth. Thank you for joining me. Consider subscribing if it's been useful. Drop this video a like if it's been helpful. A few too many birds. Of various sizes. And I'm going to call that done. So thank you very much. See you again soon.